Thanks, Raj. I would echo Piers' comments. Raj does a lot for the community and bringing people together, and I think she deserves a lot of credit and recognition for that. This definitely is a community. Everyone here is friends and gets along, and I think doing work together is just kind of a side gig. So yeah, this year we thought we'd do something different. Last year we did the New South Wales sponsorship, and surprisingly I got a lot of positive feedback about our talk about mining in society, which is something that relates to all of us. So this year we thought we'd mix it up again and we'll do the dinner. The dinner is where I think a lot of the real networking and connections happen, and so I think it's a great initiative by Emajin. So yeah, today we'll just keep it simple, no agenda. This is about a powerful talk. Billy and I have known each other for a little while now, and I feel like we've connected and become good friends. We actually have a lot in common, which you might think is a bit weird considering he's a professional athlete and I'm a paper pusher. But his story is amazing and it's really inspirational. And for me, every time I've sat down with Billy, I've walked away and I thought, you know what, that's a really powerful message. It's about mental fortitude, mental resilience. And I was having a quick chat with Billy. Billy put me to the sides before. Billy's brothers play golf and they're pretty good. And he goes, Dave. He goes, I want to learn to play golf, but I don't want my brothers to know. and I'm like, Billy, you'll be good. I go, you know why? Because golf's all about overcoming adversity. You hit the bad shot. What pros are good at is forgetting about it, hitting the next shot, perfect, staying in their routine. And that's Billy's built his whole life around overcoming adversity. So without further ado, we'll roll to the clip. We've got a little bit of an intro here about Billy's story, and then we'll go from there.
Was just so dedicated, and I knew exactly what I wanted. I had a vision and I knew exactly what it took to get there. I knew that it took hard work, dedication, a lot of sacrifice, and that's the things that I did in my life to get to that point.
So please join me in welcoming our good friend, Billy the Kid Dib. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. You were bullied as a young boy, and that's what got you into boxing. So talk to us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Sydney and how you got into boxing and started your career to overcome, I guess, that initial hardship in your life.
Yeah. So thank you guys for having me here today. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to be here speaking in front of you. And when I was a young boy, my father decided that he was going to buy a convenience store in Engadine. And I was born in Hurstville, and then my dad decided to buy this convenience store in Engadine. And we walked into a rude awakening. Obviously we stood out like a sore thumb. We were the only ethnic family in the area, and so I think when you look different, people, they fear that and they started picking on us. And I think the early stages of school were, me trying to get out of going to school. I was trying to find any excuse not to go to school. And then I think my dad sort of got a little bit over it and decided that he was going to enroll us in some after school sports. And growing up as a young boy, the number one franchise in our household was the Rocky movies. So, I grew up with four older brothers, and all we did was fight each other. And so, when I was doing some footy one day, the trainer decided that we're going to do some boxercise, and when he pulled out the gloves and the pads, it was just like second nature for me. And so I remember the trainer saying, "Get your dad to take you to the Sutherland PCYC. I think you found something." And I remember turning up at the Sutherland PCYC, and it was like walking into my destiny. I just knew that was exactly what I was destined for. And the other thing is my father's name is Muhammad Ali, and he actually has the name Muhammad Ali before Muhammad Ali had the name Muhammad Ali. So, my full name is Bilal Muhammad Ali Dib, or Billy Muhammad Ali Dib, and so I think it worked hand in hand.
It's meant to be.
So it was definitely meant to be. And I think once I stamped my authority in the boxing industry as a young boy, I quickly, gained people's respect, and I think that the bullies backed off right away.
So Billy, now you're on that journey, the path to two-time world champion. Now, to become a world class athlete is no small feat, and I think that takes a lot of hard work. Talk to us a little bit about that journey, becoming world champion 2 times.
Yeah, I mean, look, that was a goal that I set out from a very, very young age. I remember from the minute that I walked into the gym at the age of 12, I remember when the door opened up at the gym and I could see all these posters of Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson and Costa Tszyu, and I was thinking, who are these people? You know, I wanted to know about them. I was so interested to know who are these people, and so I started to research. You know, I'd go to the video store and I'd rent like documentaries, and I wanted to learn about the fighters. And I learned that you could become a world champion. It quickly became my obsession, and so I quickly tried to learn what it would take to get there. And learning from my previous peers, you know what I'm saying, like the previous champions like Mike Tyson and people that I was watching, I realized that you had to put a lot of hard work in. You know, and that you had to be very dedicated. You had to turn up every single day. You had to basically leave no stone unturned, and that's exactly what I tried to do. Even I remember being like 12, 13, 14 years of age, and I used to wake up at 5 in the morning to go for a run. I'd be running in pitch black in the morning, but like no fear. You know, just all I had in that thought in my mind was that I want to be champion of the world, so this is what it takes. Because I'd watch all these video cassettes and you'd see Mike and all these guys running really early in the morning, so I thought that's what it took. You got to get up at that wee hour of the morning, and I had to go to school as well. So you know, I'd get up, run, go to school, run home from school, get on a bus, go to the gym. I was chasing the dream, you know, and I was going to leave it no stone unturned before I got there.
You spent a bit of time with Mike Tyson. You got some funny Mike Tyson stories.
I did. I was lucky enough to meet Mike Tyson in 2006, Jeff Fettig invited me to a training camp with Mike Tyson. So I got the opportunity to spend 6 weeks with Mike Tyson. I remember the feeling of meeting Mike Tyson. I'll be honest with you guys, I was on the plane writing all these questions that I wanted to ask Mike Tyson. I was super excited. So once I got to Las Vegas with Jeff, and Jeff said, listen, go upstairs, get a shower and come downstairs, we're going to go see Mike. And I remember bringing these questions with me, like I was going to get the chance to ask Mike all of these questions, right? And so I get there and Jeff says, don't say anything to him, I'll introduce you first. So he sees Jeff. Jeffrey, how you doing, Jeffrey? You know, and he gives him a hug, and then I'm thinking he's going to come give me a hug too, right? And so then Jeff says to him, Mike, I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine. This is Billy the Kid Dib. Mike, he's 13-0. He's going to be champion of the world one day. And I thought, here comes the hug. And Mike stood there and just looked at me up and down. Then he turned over to Jeff and goes, Jeffrey, I don't give a fuck. You know, it was a mad slap in the face. You know, it was like, I couldn't believe it. But honestly, things turned around and we ended up forming a really good friendship and we had a great time. So it was definitely, I definitely won Mike over, that's for sure.
Awesome. And I guess on that note, keeping you humble, you thought you'd made it, you signed a big deal with 50 Cent and Floyd Money Mayweather.
Yeah.
You had this big check, you had the Lamborghini ready to go.
I did.
You know, cruising the streets, you know, and all of a sudden it all falls apart, you know what I mean? That's tough because as a young man, you know, you have these dreams and we've all been there. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I'll be honest with you guys. So when I walked into boxing, you know, I was looking up to people like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Jeff Fennick, Costa Tszyu, Prince Nassim Hamed, Oscar De La Hoya. You know, I was looking up to the guys who were the cream of the crop. I wasn't looking at the low tier fighters. You know, I wasn't really watching the undercard fighters. I was looking at the champions, and from what I could gauge and what I could see was that if you become a world champion, it's like you're an overnight multi-millionaire. And so I built this thing in my head that all I got to do is win a world championship and I'm an overnight multi-millionaire. That's what I actually thought. That was the thought process that I had. And so the obsession was, yes, I want to become a world champion, but I want to become a multi-millionaire. And so, you know, when I won my first world title, I earned $50,000 for that fight. And then it was on the undercard of Anthony Mundine. That was Anthony Mundine being generous because he was a friend of mine. Then he got the pay-per-view money and then he said, listen, I've got a bonus for you. And it was like $25,000. So I made $75,000 for my first world title appearance, which I won. And then my next world title fight was for 130,000. I'm thinking, this is not right. You know, where's the $1 million paydays? Where's the checks for $1 million? Like, how do I buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini with $100,000? It doesn't make sense. But that was what was going through my head. But then I realized that, and I don't mean to say this in a disrespectful way, I come from Australia. And I mean it when I say it. This country is built on tall poppy syndrome, man. Because if you're a world champion in the UK, you're an overnight superstar. If you're a world champion in the US, you're an overnight superstar. But in this country, I don't know what it is. It's like they build you up to bring you down. And so, you know, I was fighting against the politics. And to be quite honest with you, when I challenged for my second world championship, it was against Jorge Lasieva. And at the time, we had no world champions in Australia. Meaning that if I could win this championship, I would be the only champion on Australian soil. Would you believe that I had to call upon a friend of mine at the time who was big in the media industry and basically tell him that, mate, my fight's not going to be televised. I've been told that my world title fight is not going to be televised. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, listen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to burn the Australian flag. That's what I said to him. And he goes, no, don't do that. I said, mate, I'll tell you, I'm better off going living in the UK and I'm going to get better treatment. And he's like, don't do that. And I'll tell you who it was. It was actually Alan Jones. And he said, listen, your fight will be televised, I promise you. The next day he rang me and he said, do you want your fight televised on Saturday or Friday? So you can fight on Friday night or Saturday night. I said, listen, you know what? I'm going to fight on Saturday night. And it was because of him that the fight got televised. Had I not spoken to Alan Jones, my fight wouldn't have even been on TV. And that's the kind of stuff that I was dealing with. And so, you know, when I finally get to the point where I'm world champion and I'm earning decent money, I'm overseas in Dubai and I get a phone call from my brother Emajin and he says, I got some great news. I said, what is it? And he says, I need you to meet me in Las Vegas. And I'm like, why? And he goes, just meet me in Las Vegas. I got something to talk to you about. I said, I'm not going to Vegas, man. What did you tell me what it is? And he's like, Floyd Mayweather and 50 Cent want to sign you up to the money team, TMT. And I was like, this is it.
Finally.
This is it.
Finally.
I'm finally going to get paid, you know what I mean? And so I flew back to Australia, got on a plane. The following day, I'm back on a flight to the US. I arrive into the US and I signed my first $1 million. I signed a deal that was just under $3 million with 50 Cent and Floyd Mayweather. And when everything panned out the way that it did, in the end, they robbed me for $2.2 million. You know what I mean? So I never really made the money that I expected to make from that situation.
So the company went bankrupt, is that right?
No, they never, the contract never fell apart or anything like that.
Yeah.
50 Cent used to always say to me, oh, don't worry, we'll fix it up. Then when it came time to fix it up, he thought by putting $50,000 and liquidating the company, that was fixing it up. And that's exactly what he did, you know what I mean? But
what year was that?
That was in 2015.
Do you have an active contract?
No. So I made a choice to look at it from a different perspective, because the truth is, right, is that, you know, boxing never gave me what I really wanted. It never gave me the millions of dollars that it promised. It gave me, but not what it promised. You know what I mean? But I like to look at it from a different perspective now. You know, I like to look at it like, you know, it gave me the opportunity to make connections, the opportunity to link up with some amazing people. And through that, you know, God has been able to, you know, bring things together for me. And so
what I like what you said about that was, if you did get that money at that age, you would have gone off and bought that Lamborghini, right?
I always say that because people often say to me,
and it wouldn't have been probably the right thing.
Well, they asked me a question. They said, what would you have done if you had the money? And I'll be honest with you guys, when I had that money outstanding from 50 Cent, truth be told, the only thing that I was thinking was, the minute he gives me that money, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. That was all I kept on telling people, is that I'm buying a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. Yeah. That's what I'm doing. Maybe God was saving me from having an accident where I was going to kill myself. You know what I mean? But
what are the fights?
What fights?
What about like fights? Big body fights?
we'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
So what I thought was interesting was when you said that you didn't get the money then. Later on in your career, you were getting those big ticket monies.
Yes.
And you weren't buying the Lamborghinis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think everything happens for a reason was the message you took out of that. You know what I mean? And it was in the right time for you. So I want to change the tone a little bit now.
Yep.
And talk about some of the difficult times in your life. So you're at the peak of your powers, you're world champion, you're on top of the world, and very sad, very hard time in your life with the passing of your first wife, Sarah.
Yeah.
So that was a very hard time for you. And no one should have to go through that, and you had to overcome that adversity. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you got yourself through that difficult time in your life?
Yeah. You know, the thing about life is that life is a bag of hurdles.
Sure.
And life is a bag of arrows. And life is going to knock you down many, many times. And the truth is that if you've never been knocked down in your life, at some point life will knock you down. And then it'll knock you down again. But throughout my life, I always found a way to persevere and overcome. And if you look at my boxing record, you'll see that from 2008 up until 2024, I remained top 10 in the world because I always found a way to overcome and to persevere and to continuously get back up. And the truth is that when Sarah was diagnosed with cancer, my wife, it came as a major shock. I'll be honest, when I took Sarah to the hospital for her first day of treatment, I was saying to myself, how does she have cancer? She looked like a perfectly in shape. You know, she looked phenomenal. There was nothing wrong with her. And within weeks of taking the chemotherapy, she just crumbled to pieces. She fell apart, and you know, it was in the end, it wasn't the cancer that killed her, it was the chemotherapy. She actually died in remission. So she died from the chemotherapy while she was in remission, which is incredible, you know. And so I looked at it from a perspective of, again, trying to, you know, put my mind together. I remember what I said that night because she died, it was nearly midnight, and it was a Saturday night. And I was trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and I said to myself, you know what? God took her in the perfect place, because had Sarah died elsewhere, it might have been my fault. Maybe her and I could have been in the car together. Maybe we would have been driving, and maybe we would have had a car accident. She would have died, I would have survived, because it wasn't my time to die. And I would have lived the rest of my life dealing with this thing of losing my wife because of my reckless driving or something, you know what I mean? So I always like to look at things from a perspective like that, like God took her in the perfect place. And I know that Sarah is in a much better place now. You know, Sarah was truly an angel on earth. That's the truth. She was an amazing human being. She had the heart of gold. She never hurt a fly. And I know where she is. I know that she's in heaven right now looking upon us, you know.
It's incredibly hard, Billy. And then
2015.
So she died when you were going through all this other
So the week of 50 Cent robbing me for that money, when that same week she died.
pretty tough.
So, you know, like, I'll be honest with you, when I came home that night after learning that Sarah wasn't going to make it, because the doctors told us to prepare for the worst, my mum still didn't know what was going on. I hadn't said anything to her. I didn't ring her on the phone. I didn't want to worry her. But she knew about what had happened with 50 Cent. So when I got home, I was in tears, as you would be. And my mum was trying to explain to me that, don't worry, that money's going to find you one day. And I was like, Mum, it's got nothing to do with the money. I don't care about the money, because even if I had the money, I couldn't save my wife. So what's the purpose of the money now? You know, because if I had the money and they said to me, we need that $2 million to save her life, I would have given it to them. But what purpose did the money have anymore? There was no purpose to it.
So after that, Billy, you had to rebuild yourself, rebuild your career, get back in the ring. I know it was a tough time for you. I think you went over to America just to kind of get away from it all and try to rebuild things a little bit. talk to us a little bit about that journey, the mental fortitude, the resilience, what you told yourself during those hard times to get yourself not only back into your life, but back to an elite athlete position, you know what I mean? So it's really tough.
2015 it will definitely be one of the hardest years of my life, because in 2015 I suffered a really bad loss in the boxing ring to Takashi Miura. It was the first time that I'd ever been knocked. I got knocked down heavily. I got back up, but the referee stopped the fight because he just felt that I wasn't fit to continue, which was the right decision. Because the fighter always wants to continue, but
Of course.
probably would have become my demise. And then shortly after that, my wife's diagnosed with cancer. Shortly after that, 50 Cent robs me for my money. Shortly after that, Sarah dies. So 2015 is quite possibly the worst year of my life. And so the only way that I looked at it was like, I've been so down, the only way up, the only way now is up, you know? And so I felt like it was an opportunity for me to get back on the horse and to prove a lot of naysayers wrong. You know, I was nowhere in the world rankings at that time because, you know, I'd been out of the ring for some time. I spent some time away from boxing, and then I decided that I was going to dive right into another really hard fight right away. And that's what I did. I jumped into another difficult fight. I fought a guy that was ranked in the top 15 in the world. I beat him, and I was rated number 14 right away. And so my goal became that I was now going to do this in memory of Sarah. And so just before Sarah passed away, she actually sent me a message because I was telling her that no matter what happens, I'm not going back to boxing, because they were telling me that if she wakes up from her illness that, you know, she's going to need a long time to recover. But just before she fell into a coma, she sent me a message about wanting me to do what I wanted to do. Don't worry about what everybody else is telling you. I want you to be happy, and I want you to chase your dreams, and, you know, I want you to go out there and chase another world championship. And so I sort of, when she passed away, you start looking back on old messages, and when I read that message, I look at like that was her telling me that she wanted me to win another world title. So now I began this process of, you know what, I'm going to do this for me and for her. And so I eventually found myself back in a world championship fight, and I won the purse bid, and I staged the fight at the Trams place it was it was not too far from the city. It was in Alexandria, yeah. So I staged that event in Alexandria. I got TV. It was a major event, and I remember fighting a very talented American kid by the name of Tevin Farmer, and the preparation that I had was phenomenal, but it was the wrong prep. I had this idea that I was going to bully him, and but he was so slick, and I couldn't quite pin him down. And so in the end, he ended up winning the fight. And so again, that was a loss, but the way I looked at it was a victory. I lost, but I was victorious, because I was basically written off. I'd been told by everybody that you'd never get back there, but I reworked my way back into that position and put myself in line for another world championship fight. And I didn't win, but it was okay because I got back there. And that was the message for young kids. There were so many young kids at that fight, and I remember picking up the mic and saying that the message out of this is clear, is that yes, I didn't win the world title, but I won in another way, because I proved that no matter what you go through in your life, if you get back on the horse, anything is possible. And to even find myself back in another world championship fight was an amazing achievement.
So Billy, you're back there, you're fit, you're at an elite level again, and lo and behold, you get now. I know that was very difficult for you, especially after what Sarah, your wife, went through. And initially you were very reluctant to do the treatment, understandably, after what you've just said. The doctors came to you and they said, listen, you want to take your son to school, these are your options.
Yeah.
You were in hospital for how long, mate?
6 months.
6 months doing the chemo. You saw the vision there before, what it did to you. It absolutely destroyed you. That was the hardest fight of your life, right?
Definitely.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I often tell people that they say to me, what's the hardest fight of your life? And I say that It was an opponent that I couldn't see. And this opponent had 100% speed, 100% agility, 100% power. You know, when you play a boxing video game, you know, usually the fighter has 50% power, 30% speed. Well, when it came to cancer, it had 100% everything. And I was up against it. You know, the doctor walked into the room and said to me, "I'm very sorry to tell you this, but I understand that you're very reluctant to take the chemotherapy, and if you don't do it," he goes, "you'll be dead in 6 months." He goes, "The results of your bloods are that bad." He goes, I don't even know if you'll see 6 months." And I said to him, "I can't die." And that's exactly what I said to him. I said to him, "I can't die." You know, and my mum was sat behind me, and my mum was in tears, and I looked him in the face and just said to him, "I can't die." And he said to me, "Why?" He asked me the question, why, and I said to him, "I have a son who's 2 years and 10 months old, and I'm walking my son to school in 2 years' time, so cancer picked the wrong opponent. So I'll do the chemotherapy." And he's like, "Just like that?" And I said, "Exactly." He goes, "You'd been telling everybody that you'll never do chemotherapy." I said, "Listen, it ain't about me anymore." And the truth is that I've never been a quitter in my whole life. I've never quit on anything in my whole life. If you can find one person that can come to you and say that Billy Dips quit on one thing, I'll tell you he's lying. Because I've never quit. Because my whole mentality is that if you quit once, you'll quit again. And then my whole thing was that if I quit, then I give permission to my wife to quit, who then gives permission to my son to quit, and then my son becomes a quitter because his dad was a quitter. And I was never going to let my son go to school and tell his friends that his dad checked out because he quit. No way in the world. I was going to fight this cancer head on, and if cancer got the better of me, then that's what it was, you know what I mean? But my vision was that I was going to survive. And matter of fact, as I told you guys, the #1 franchise in my household was the Rocky movies. And in Rocky 5, there's a scene where the trainer comes to Rocky and he says to him, "One day I'm going to be like an angel on your shoulder, and I'm going to tell you to get up, you son of a bitch, because Mickey loves you." And that was exactly what I wrote on the wall of the hospital. To their demise, they were not happy about it, but I wrote on the hospital wall, "Get up, you son of a bitch, because Leif loves you." And I told him that this room would be mine for the whole treatment. I wasn't going to change rooms, and that's exactly what I did. Every time I felt like I was down and out, I wasn't going to be able to get up, I thought about my son, and I thought about him walking to school and telling his friends that his dad didn't make it. And I said, that ain't going to be me. And as hard as the journey was, I looked at it like a cleansing, you know, like God was giving me another chance. And so today, I live my life for those who didn't make it, you know what I mean? And there's so many people that I meet that tell me that, look, my brother died from cancer, or my sister died from cancer, or my mum or my brother or my son, and I always tell them that I'm living for them. You know, I'm living for them. I'm living for all of the people who lost their battle to cancer. So I spend my time now trying to help people as much as I can. That's what I feel like God spared me, because I made a prayer. I said, God, if you spare me, I promise you I'll do everything in my power to help people, and that's what I do today. I spend my life helping people.
So I'm happy to touch on that a little bit. That's actually, he's helped us. Vivian and I are very passionate about giving back to charity, and we've established now a formal relationship with the Sydney Children's Hospital. Billy's been very helpful. I've been very generous with donating a very unique piece of Australian world boxing memorabilia, which helped us raise important funds for the hospital. I've also seen firsthand the work he does, both Australia and in third world developing countries where it's really needed. You know, just simple things like cataract surgeries and things like that. So it's a testament to you that I think you found your why. So when you had your cancer, you found your why. You weren't going to take your son to school.
Yeah.
You know, you manifested that. And you've also found your why now with your charitable endeavours, and it's a credit to you. What I love is what happens next. You beat the cancer, which is awesome. And then you get back in the ring.
Yeah.
Right? And you have a comeback fight and you win. It's awesome. This is my favourite part of your journey. Your whole life you seeked validation from Mike Tyson, from Jeff Fennick, from Prince Nassim, all these elite fighters, and you've been very transparent now, saying you never quite got what you were looking for from your boxing career. In that comeback fight, you won, and in the night of nights in the boxing world, which is like the Oscars or something like equivalent in the boxing world, you won Comeback Fight of the Year. And I watched this live before I even met you, and every single person in that world gave you a standing ovation when you won that prize, Comeback of the Year. and you finally receive the validation from the peers, all the top boxers in the world, the who's who, all the top promoters, you finally receive that validation. And to me, it's an amazing part of your journey. Like you said before, you didn't get the money first, but you got it in the end with your comeback fights and so on. And then you finally got the validation you were seeking in that award. Talk to us about that feeling.
I mean, look, that all started, obviously I was still in the peak of my boxing career when I was diagnosed with cancer. I was rated number 7 in the world, and I was on the verge of a big opportunity, and then all of a sudden you're diagnosed with this cancer, and so boxing became this thing of, it's on the back burner. I'm not thinking about that anymore. All I'm thinking about is surviving and being there for my family, my son. That became everything to me. I didn't care about boxing anymore. It was like a distant memory. And so, when I remember in the early weeks of being diagnosed with cancer, I got a phone call from a very prominent figure in the sporting world named Mauricio Suleiman, who's basically the boss of the WBC, the World Boxing Council. And he said, I'm currently at the WBC convention. It was 2023. And he goes, and we're all cheering you on. And we want to see you at the next convention. Sorry, it was 2022. And he goes, we want to see you at the next convention. And I said to him, if God wills, I'll be there, And so when I beat the cancer, one of the first people that called me was Mauricio Suleiman. He said, congratulations, and are we going to see you at the convention? And I was like, really? And he's like, absolutely, like I'm a man of my word. And he goes, we've got a very, very special present for you. And I was like, I'm very excited to see this present, And so I remember getting on a plane. I flew to Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and I get to this WBC convention, and the auditorium's full of amazing champions. And I remember being invited onto the stage, and I was awarded a world championship belt called Champion of Hope. Yeah. And the title was a fully fledged WBC world title, a world title that I dreamed of holding. And they presented me with this championship, and I remember, I was awarded this in front of some of the best fighters in the world. But this was not the Ring Magazine Awards, but just even that accolade in itself was very fulfilling, and I felt like I had achieved something. And then we went to a dinner with Mike Tyson, and this conversation started about, could you imagine you had a comeback fight? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And somebody's like, mate, could you imagine how many people you could inspire? Yeah. And I thought to myself, I like the sound of this. I like the sound of inspiring people, so why not? And so I remember them speaking loudly in front of Mauricio Suleiman, and Mauricio said, absolutely not. I would never let him fight in a WBC ring. No way in hell, no chance. And so now this obsession began about this comeback fight. And so I'm contacting Mauricio, please, we do it. And he says, look, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to do it. So then one day I told my brother, come to the gym with me because I'm feeling really good today. And I think I'm going to be able to do something good in training. And so I sparred really well, and my brother recorded it, and I sent it to Mauricio, and he goes, you look pretty good. And I said, would you let me fight? And he said, I still won't let you fight unless you get me a clearance. I need a clearance from your hematologist. So I rang my hematologist, and the hematologist said, I'll give you a clearance. And so this talk about a comeback fight eventuated, and I find myself in Germany in 2024 at the WBC convention, fighting in my final fight, a farewell fight, and an opportunity for me to leave the sport of boxing on my own terms. Because see, the sport of boxing at times can be very unforgiving, and there's a lot of fighters that overstay their welcome, and most of them leave on their back. But I was getting the chance to leave on my own terms. I wasn't sure if I'd leave on my back or on my feet, but thankfully for me, I left on my feet as a victorious person on that night. And then I get home and I'm already feeling like an absolute world champion. Like I'd achieved my goal. I actually fought that night again in front of Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield, Terence Crawford, Amir Khan. There were so many great champions in the room, and I got to perform in front of them, and I felt very vindicated. And then I arrive home and I get a phone call from the Saudi, the Saudi basically government, who have taken over the sport of boxing called Riyadh Season, and they said, we'd like to invite you to the 2025 Ring Magazine Awards. And I was like, am I going to win? And he's like, I don't know, but you've been nominated. So, we'd like to extend the invitation. And basically he said, like, we want to fly you over first class. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, can I forfeit the first class flight and bring another person with me? Can we go business class? And he's like, well, we can do that, no problem. So I ended up taking my brother with me, and we arrive into London, and the who's who of boxing is there. On the first night, we went out to dinner. Alexander Usyk was there, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. The who's who of boxing was there. Teofimo Lopez, Terence Crawford. Every major fighter in the sport of boxing, both past and present, was there. And everybody was talking about this comeback of the ring award. And I was up against some really good names. But the whole talk that whole week was that nobody can beat Billy Dib. Nobody's beating cancer. Billy Dib's got her hands down. And I started getting nervous. So, I decided that I was going to write a really good, speech. I wasn't sure if I was going to win, but I wrote this amazing speech and I practiced it over and over. And I sat down, and I was sat like maybe 3/4 of the way back.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember, this thing come up and comeback fighter of the year, and then Ryan Garcia gets up and he's holding the envelope and he goes, the winner and Ring Magazine comeback fighter of the year is Billy Dib. And everybody in the auditorium stood up. Like, I'm talking everybody from Oscar De La Hoya, Shane Mosley, Mike Tyson. Everybody stood up and clapped me all the way to the stage, and it was like boxing finally gave me my flowers. Like, I finally got the accolades that I wanted from the sport of boxing. And I tell you, I was just speaking to a friend of mine over there, Andrew, and I said to him, in this country, I go to a boxing event and, you don't kind of get the love and the accolades that you feel like you deserve in this country. But when I go to America or Saudi Arabia or England, I get treated like royalty, you know what I mean? And so I just put it down to this country being put on top popular syndrome. But listen, at the end of the day, the sport of boxing gave me everything that I wanted in the end, and that was to be recognized by the greats and to be given the accolades that I deserve, and I finally got it.
Alan Jones.
Stand up to that one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Alan Jones, 1980 Formula One world champion, has the same thing. He walks down the street and no one gives a crap about him because he hasn't won Bathurst in Australia. But he goes to England or somewhere else or Europe and he's a superstar because he's a Formula One world champion, you know what I mean? So it's just the uniqueness of Australian sport, I guess.
That's just what it is. It is what it is. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity that God has given me, and can I talk a little bit about what I do today in my life?
Yeah, I was going to get onto that
Yeah,
next.
go ahead.
So yeah, go ahead.
So, and that is to help people. And so what I do now is I travel the world helping the less fortunate. And I've been blessed enough now to write 2 books, and I've got my 3rd book that's it's in play right now. And the 3rd book that I've written is called Still Standing, and it's coming off the name of my documentary that's been filmed by Netflix. It's called Still Standing as well. Hopefully coming out sometime in September. And so I just feel blessed that I've been put in a position where I can help people. And so I actually have written a kid's book that's really, really important, and I actually want to get it, and I want to show you guys for a second, because this book is a really, really important book, and it's got a really important title. And the title on this book is called Boys Can't Cry, and Billy Dib does too. And the reason why I wrote this book was because in 2000 and I think it was like 2000 and it was the year 2000 actually. I was 12 years of age, and I was 14 years of age, sorry, I should say. And my grandmother, she had a heart attack and basically passed away. She was resuscitated, but in that time when she fell to the ground and had a heart attack, I began to cry. And somebody in the room, excuse my French, said, "Shut the fuck up and stop crying like a little girl. You're supposed to be champion of the world one day. People talk about you're going to be champion, you're going to be this, and here you are crying like a little girl. Let the women cry. Stop crying like a girl." And right in that moment, that person robbed me of the ability to express myself. And that stayed with me for a very, very long time. Matter of fact, My grandmother died when I was 17, and I remember being at the cemetery and everybody was crying except for me. Everybody was crying except for me. I was the only person standing there, cold as ice. And I remember stepping away because things were starting to feel heavy in my heart. And somebody followed me and said to me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "You sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I said, "Listen, I want to tell you something." I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's okay to cry." And the minute he said that, I burst into tears and hugged him. It's like he gave me permission to express myself. And so then you fast forward to 2022. I've just spent 6 weeks in hospital, haven't seen my son for 6 weeks because the doctors have said not to bring him to the hospital because the chemotherapy and everything's no good for him. The radiation and all that stuff's no good. So I finally get the opportunity to go home after negotiating with the doctors. And while I'm at home, somebody says to my son, "Stop crying like a girl." And I said, "Don't you ever say that to my son again." And he said, "What are you talking about, man?" I said, "Don't you ever say that to my son again. I'm a cancer patient, but I will knock you out right now. Don't say that to him again." And he was shocked. And I said, "You don't know the damage that did to me as a young boy." And so I made a decision to write this book based on that. And this book's about empowering our children to know that it's okay to express themselves. It's okay for my son to express himself. I want my son to know that if there's something wrong in his life, he can come to me. There's no problem that's bigger than what I can solve for him, you know what I mean? I don't care whether he's done the most horrific crime, which he never will do, God willing, but if he did, I'm going to be there with my son, and if he needs to cry, he can cry on my shoulder. And so I want every kid, and I want to let you guys know, this batch that I have right here, this is the last batch of 10,000 books that I've had. I've sold nearly 10,000 copies of this book. And I have planned on selling another 100,000 copies. I want this to be the greatest seller of all times. And I've had the amazing support of Riyadh Season and the WBC in pushing this book. So this book is not only written in English, but it's in fact now being written in Spanish, in Arabic. It's been written in multilingual. It's been written in Japanese. So I want to impact the world through my story. This is a book based on true events about things that happened to me. And Raj has been kind enough to say that everybody can take one of these on the way out, guys. You won't be charged for the book. Just take it, give it to one of your kids. There's my autobiographies there as well. I really want this book to be pushed, and that's my goal today. My goal in life today is to simply help people. That's all I care about. I want nothing more from life. God gave me an opportunity to survive, so I want to spend my time now helping people survive. That's what I want. Thank you so much for having me.
Very nice. A little closer to home, I just want to finish on one little personal thing. My cousin who's was diagnosed with cancer, very similar cancer to what Billy had. He was doing it really tough. He had surgery, he only just made it. It was really bad. And he needed a second surgery, and the doctor's like, "Mate, you're too weak. You're too weak mentally, you're too weak physically. We can't do this second surgery, and you're not going to get better until you do this second surgery." So he was literally on his deathbed. And he's a very private guy. Anyway, I rang him. And I rang his brother, actually. I go, "Listen, like, do you reckon if I get Billy out there just to talk to him, you know, might just lift his spirits a little bit? He needs his surgery." And he goes, "I'll ask." And he had taken no visitors. He hadn't told anyone, taken no visitors. I mentioned Billy, he goes, yeah, send Billy. So we went over. And no one had been to his house. And he was in bad shape. He was in bad shape, right? He could barely walk. And Billy, to his credit, spent an hour and a half with him. Very generous, very powerful message, and was just extremely selfless with his time. And I'm proud to say he's actually had that second surgery now and he's recovering really well. So yeah, so thank you, Billy. So I think that pretty much wraps things up. I think you've touched on your legacy, which was the next thing I was going to talk about. Really passionate about that, and I think that's a credit to you that you've stuck to your words. Billy, thank you for your time. It's a powerful message. I hope everyone can take something away with that, and something I think we can apply to everyday life, whether it's something trivial like your next golf shot, or something more serious like a business decision or a life decision, or fighting something really hard in your life. So I think it's really powerful.
I'll say something in closing. just in closing, I want to say something, and I really, really mean this, right? So, life is not going to be easy. And so many times in your life, you'll get knocked down. But the most important thing to continuously do is get back up and keep trying. Because the minute that you give up, it's over. But as long as you continue to persevere and continue to push forward and try, that's all that matters. Whether you're succeeding or not, that is all that matters. So in closing, guys, I wish each and every single one of you guys all the very best. I hope that you guys go on to have super amazing success and continue to have super amazing success. And I hope that your children can grow up to make you all very, very proud. Thank you so much for having me here tonight, David.
Thanks.
I love you so much, mate. Raj, thank you so much for the opportunity. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much to my good brothers as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well done.